First of all, I think your analysis was very straight line. History doesn't run in a straight line.
Kid, you cannot tell your neighbor he is stealing ducks when you are stealing funds.
As High Commissioner, I was wrong. As Charandas Prasad, I reacted naturally how any person would have.
I did not come here for that kind of abuse. I did not come here for that kind of abuse. If you're going to go down that road, I'll walk off.
But it's all okay once they're talking. If they were talking, I could not have been here today.
You got ADHD.
I got nothing.
Calm down.
I think I've done enough in terms of taking our team out of trouble from losing.
Come on, Lou Taylor. That's good. I'm reading the script now, and the first person that comes to my mind to play a detective,
Yes,
but
the
an
Chinese critic.
erratic
Mikhail
detective,
Rodriguez.
is Mikhail Rodriguez.
Why an African slap an Indian? Why a man and slap a woman? Look, how you deal with that? You deal with that.
We must encourage platforms like this because it brings together different people and allows for discussions to take place in our country on a multiplicity of fundamental issues.
Gildarie, you apologizing for something you think I did is wrong. I don't want you to do that, and you should not have done that. You are about to watch the Gildarie Freddie Kissoon show. Wherever you are, good evening, good night, good afternoon, good morning. This is the Freddie Kissoon Gildarie show. We come to you Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 8:30 p.m. When we started this program, our specific, particular, and inflexible desire and intention was to use this program to add to Guyana's historiography. And we think we have achieved that. We have sat down with some people whose output on this program have contributed to Guyana's historiography. We have no doubt that when researchers look at these programs for the past 14 years, they will find material that they could use and add to Guyana's historiography. It is not every day you sit down with a Guyanese and you talk with him, and his story is just simply fascinating. And there are people like that. And we are so elated this evening to feature, to bring on your smartphones and in your living room a Guyanese with an interesting history. But guess what? We don't hear about these people often. They did their thing. They were once very famous. They lived very interesting lives. And then the new generation came. But that is where this program comes in. We're going to be talking with a very fascinating and interesting Guyanese because of what he did in Guyana, in the UK, with his life. And one hopes at the end of this program, young Guyanese would learn a little bit about what it was like, but most of all, they will remember that we featured a very, very famous Guyanese a few decades ago who lived a very interesting life in Guyana. Our guest this evening is one of the most experienced person, I don't want to say in the world, but he has chalked up more than 40 years in advertising with top English firms and with Guyanese firms, and eventually formed his own advertising agency, which was quite popular until he retired in 2004. Our guest this evening is more known for being one of the most creative Mashramani designer since 1974 for more than a decade. So he walks on different horizons. He's a competent graphic artist, has been like that over 40 years. He has worked with some of the best advertising agencies in the UK, and he was an extraordinary designer in the annual Mashramani competition. Our guest this evening is Bernard Ramsay, and I will hand over to my co-host Leonard Gildarie to start the journey of history with Mr. Ramsay. Mr. Ramsay, it is a pleasure the past half an hour chatting with you before we go live. I can't believe you have such an interest in history.
It's a pleasure hearing my brother. Thank you, Leonard. It's always good. Yes, Leonard. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening, and it's always a pleasure coming to you. I hope that you're remaining safe. And before we started, within a few hours, I must tell you, within a few hours, our Harbour Bridge, Demar Harbour Bridge, is going to be closed for 3 days. So I hope that you guys have taken, on the west side especially, and those on the Region 2, Escobar Coast, and Baltic and so on, that you've taken the necessary arrangements so you are not going to be burdened by the closure of the Harbour Bridge. And that is closed because there's going to be some emergency works on one of the spans, a very critical span on the Harbour Bridge. It's been hampering or it's been affecting the operations of the Harbour Bridge for a little while. I must tell you that we talk a lot about people who've done well in Guyana, the policemen from time to time, but the people on the Harbour Bridge has done a fantastic job in the recent years. Consecutive managers has heralded their team, and a bridge that was built for 10 years or supposed to last or have a lifespan of about 10 years is there 40 plus years going. And I swear to God, I tell you, I used to live across the bridge. I fear every single day that there's going to be a problem with that Harbour Bridge at hampers, because there's so many commuters moving back and forth. There's so much trade that's happening between the islands and going to those areas there. The authorities are saying that there's enough arrangements being made and enough stock in the Region 3 and Escobar Coast area to last 3 days. So it closes at midnight, and it's going to be, the bridge is supposed to be up and running midnight on Thursday. So we're keeping our eyes very closely on that. If you're going to leave, there's going to be river taxis across the river, 24 hours, police protection, lots of lights, stellings and so on. So I just want to remind you, because that is something that is very hard to pill to swallow, especially that bridge being closed. It's very dear to us, and we're hoping to have the other one in a few years. So we're not going to be having a floating bridge, which may go down or not. But that's the case. Well, let's get right into it. Our guest this evening is somebody who happens to have been involved in a business which I'm involved in, and I have some ideas. I remembered in the 80s, I was just telling Freddie and Bernard here, in the 80s, the world of advertising, the world of the media changed so dramatically. In the 80s, it was a lot about the radios. I remember one of the things as a little boy growing up, the thing that stuck in my head, I'll never forget it, and I haven't heard it so long. There was 2 tunes. That announcement tune at 9 o'clock, and when you hear that thing come on, you better go sit down, because it was such a serious thing. You can't even smile or anything, because grandmother, everybody tuned in to hear who did. There was a Ricks and Sari at Spice Up the Chicken with Ricks and Sari. You remember that?
We did.
If the older folks will remember that, and these are things that stuck in my head. Going on to the 90s, I'm going to be a little longish here, because for those folks who are a little younger, context is everything. In the 90s, moving on, you had the television. Television was a big thing. There was Clem David and a whole bunch of morning and afternoon show. The Hussein, Riaz Hussein, and I think the Naim Chan and all those guys were there. And it was dominated. Moving on, we saw coming on to about 2010 onwards, there was a dramatic shift in which the internet really rooted itself, Today, the advertising world has shifted where digital advertising is a big thing. It's on social media, and now we have the billboards, which I'm involved in, the digital billboards. And I could tell you, when you have a limited number of companies in Guyana, and that money has to be shared there, the creative works is really called into question. And we have a big problem in Guyana right now. We have a shortage, really, of creative talents, and we have to really look at developing that in capacity. Mr. Ramsay, straight up to you, sir. You would have been paying attention. I look at you, you're still a very, very young man. I can't say that contrary to what Freddie would have said, and your years of experience, your appearance belies that. What you would have seen back in your days to what you're seeing now, are you blown away by the technology change that now calls for a different kind of thinking?
Okay, blown away is a dramatic word. Because I've been in the industry for all my life, starting out at a graphic, the Guyana graphic that was, I have been able to see the progression of advertising from the days you speak about, when everything was done by hand and everything depended on your brain, your creative ability to put the work out for publication. There was nothing, no aids, no computers, no anything at all to assist you. You were what you were. So I worked in that period, and then I came through to the modern age of technology. Actually, my experience with technology was also kind of came in a very smooth way, if you like, because I went to live in Antigua, and Antigua was a little bit more advanced in those days in terms of technology than we were. There were already people, companies there selling computers and doing training and this kind of stuff. And it's the first place I heard of a program called Corel Draw.
Mm-hmm.
And
familiar with that,
right? And when I heard about it, and there was a German guy there who I think he was married to an Antiguan, who told me about it. And when he tried to explain to me what it could do, it's like I couldn't fathom it. I really couldn't figure how is a computer going to do what you're telling me is going to do, because I had no idea at the time. However, I got introduced to it there, and I was able to grasp some of the technology which was upon us in the very early stages. I remember my first experience with the first computer I owned was sitting before it and not wanting to touch it, because I thought if I touch anything, I'll spoil it, I'll do damage to it. But I was encouraged, no, you got to experiment with it, do your thing, I tried, but it was a little bit intimidating. And my son, believe it or not, who at the time could not have been more, my eldest son, Jonathan, could not have been more than, I think, 14 if that old. Sat down before it without my knowing, and he started to do things. We had the Corel Draw program installed in it, and then he called me to show me what he did. And he said, "But you did that?" I said, "Yeah, that's easy. Let me show you." And he started to show me, around it and what to do and how to do it. And in fact, he was the person who helped me to set up my first email account. And because of that, I kept it. BernardRamsay@hotmail.com. And I got other accounts, but that one I'll always cherish, because he's the one who showed me. And from there on, we started to purchase computers in our agency, which is Creative Advertising and Marketing. And we got hold of a young gentleman who was brought to me. He now works with DD Science. And he was like a computer geek, but he didn't understand anything about, he wasn't creatively minded. He just understood computers. And he didn't know anything about the graphic arts programs and all that. But he sat down with me, and I sat down with him, and he went through the program, and like my son, he got an understanding of it, and then I will tell him what I wanted to achieve. And I was amazed that it could be achieved. And I'm just hoping that maybe let's push in the magic of this thing. Of course, later on, I got myself very proficient with it, and so now I understand what you were saying to me just earlier about all the new digital things, because we had we gotten into the white printers and that kind of thing, banners and that kind of stuff. I was also into silk screen printing. I had my own stuff, and from there on, digital work in cameras and all kind of stuff. So I mean, I understand that it has moved, and while it has not blown me away, as you said, it has made me come to realize how technology is impacting this world today. In many, many ways. It's unbelievable things that can be achieved through technology.
Freddie,
I want to switch a little bit to the lighter side, because we're going to go into a lot of heavy stuff about you and what Guyana was like in the 60s, Mashramani, what was Mr. Burnham like, etc., working for him. But I want to touch on a little bit lighter issue that our viewers may be interested in. You were once married to a psychiatrist, so in the home, did you see books on Sigmund Freud lying on the table?
No, not at all. No, actually, it wasn't like that, because our marriage, unfortunately, didn't. I like to say it lasted about a year, but actually, in real
fact,
did
she ever psychoanalyze?
No. Well, she did make remarks about me, but I understand that
and that was coming from an expert.
Yeah, well, she was young and training and stuff like that. But no, I didn't. She wasn't that deep into it. She started out in the area of nursing, right? Psychiatric nursing. I used to go to the hospital quite a lot and meet a lot of the inmates and stuff like that. I was fascinated by their stories and their approaches and stuff like that, and how they dealt with them. But no, she never psychoanalyzed me. I think in many ways I appreciate that she didn't. But
you would know she did?
She probably did.
When you speak to someone like you, who I would think, from researching you and listening to you speak, you would have been fairly well embedded in society in the 60s and 70s. You would have known the creme de la creme of Georgetown. But you also work in some very fascinating places in the UK. Like, I think there's a connection with where you work and the company that owned the Titanic.
Yes, one of the companies I worked with, it was called Union International, and Union International, one of the companies in Argentina was the Blue Star Line, and the Blue Star Line, it was a British company. That's the company that actually didn't build the Titanic, but actually commissioned the Titanic to be built for their company. But by the time I went to work with them, Blue Star Line's profile had changed quite a lot. They were more into what we call now cruise ship kind of area. But
what was Georgetown like in the 60s? What was working as an advertising person? You didn't have that technology, no such thing as computer, no smartphone, and you're running an agency. You're working with agency like Vivian Lee Agency. What do you yearn back for those days?
I don't. I'm not the kind of person who tend to look back. I consider the past to be a memory trace, And if I want to find something out, I go back and I remember and stuff like that. But I don't place any emphasis on the past. But yes, in those, to answer your question more appropriately, is that Georgetown was different. Of course, it was different. There's less traffic on the road, and therefore a lot of things look neater because of that situation. As well as the city was governed differently at the time. I mean, you had mayors and stuff, people like Locke and Merriman and all these guys who did a fantastic job of running the city, and everything was in order. There was more order then, but over time, we seem to have departed from that system of order. Working back then, it was different. As I was saying to Leonard, we didn't have the technology. Everything was done by hand. You're going to do if you're going to prepare an advertisement in color, you had to do it on overlays. And then if anything goes wrong, you got to start over again and that kind of stuff. I started out my career with the Guyana Graphic, in the advertising department of the Guyana Graphic. And one of the things that I remember is that the guy who I trained under, a guy by the name of Michael Emile, lives in Canada now. We're still very good friends. Was 6 or 7 years older than I am. He taught me a lot. And
he was a foreigner?
No, Mike Emile was Guyanese. Yes, he was Guyanese. And he taught me a lot about advertising and balance and how to put ads together and stuff like that. When I first went to the department, my job was like do the dummies for the advertising section. Like they would pass all the information to me. I would lay the page out. We had dummies with, I don't still have them anymore. It's paper, lines, whatever. They won't have that because the computers and all that, and publishing programs. So we had to plan the ads, and we knew what size ad would go on the right-hand page, what size ad would go on the left-hand page, how to place smaller ads, right? So you get the reader's attention. And that kind of thing. So, and then those pages will go to the editorial department. In those days, you had people like Ricky Singh working there.
Rick Mentis, Ricardo Smith.
Ricardo Smith was my boss, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Bob Granselt was the managing director. Smith was the daily editor. Can't remember his first name. Then you had Ashby. You had a whole host of other people who Joan Cambridge is the Sunday.
The present owner of Stab Book News.
Yes, Doreen DeCary. She worked with in the advertising department. Excellent salesperson. Very lovely lady. And she took to me, and I took to her. And she used to call me her son. Tell everybody that's my son, right? And we had a good relationship. She was going through a little difficult period at the marriage, and I would babysit her kids whenever she wanted to, go out and that kind of stuff. And it's in that vein that I met the editor, the publisher of the Stab Book News, David DeCary, because they were going out together, and they subsequently got married. And when it'll be a trade-off for me, because in those days, most youngsters rode motorbikes. There wasn't cars and stuff. Although cars were cheap. I mean, the thing was cheap by today's standards. So I didn't have a motorbike. I couldn't afford a motorbike then. But I could have ride a motorbike. I had friends who had motorbikes, so I didn't have a license or anything like that. So in those days, you buy what you call a provisional license, which is a temporary license that allows you to ride a bike. Put an L on the bike and you ride it. And Doreen would let me. She had a brand new Honda Cub which she had bought from Marks and Company, which is one of our big customers at the time at the Graphic. And the trade-off would be I keep the kids. look after them and so, and then I get to use the motorcycle to roam about at night with the boys and, lime and that kind of stuff. So that's how I got to meet them. Very wonderful person, and she continued all throughout her life to introduce me as her son to everybody. This is my son, blah, blah, blah. So that was the genesis and the beginning of my advertising career at the Graphic, starting out at the Graphic. It was a wonderful experience because you didn't only work in the advertising department, you worked with the production department. Because, if they production and the editorial, because, for instance, during the 80-day strike and those strikes that they had in Linden and stuff, where there's a lot of brutal stuff going on, the photographs had come to us. A guy called Donald Periano was he was the chief man, and a guy called Sadhu was his backup man. They would bring the pictures.
Yeah, you remember the names well, Mr.
Yeah. They'd bring the pictures to us, and we'd have these gory things.
You always had
yeah.
But this is pretty interesting because let me tell you this, going back and I'm interested in how this country has evolved. And I want to tell you, this is funny. Do you know that almost everybody who owns a smartphone and who owns social media now is a graphic artist? They got some apps you would not believe it would make Freddie Kissoon look handsome.
Yeah. Well, and look talented too, because...
No, I'm just kidding there. But it's unbelievable what technology has done and what apps have done. Anything, my kids would do some things with that smartphone and a couple of apps and what you call filters and so on, that I would say it would make you look 40 years younger.
Of course.
That is how it is. You said something leading up to this program before we started going live about the days of when you got to see to understand it. Now, if you go to a movie theater and you see what you call a trailer or whatever it is, it is being done, they send it to you, everything is being done. But let's say across here, back in those days, the 60s and the 70s, what was the experience, or how did they do the trailers, or what was the thing when it come? You talk about the pictures and so, and how they did the commercials. How did they do it back then?
Well, everything was done on film.
Right.
It was using the old movie camera, with the cine type mechanism, big reels and stuff like that. In my early stages of the game, I didn't have too much to do with that, because a lot of the advertising, commercial advertising, or movie ads, as you might want to call them, the moving ads, the commercials, would come from abroad, from Jamaica, from Trinidad, from Europe, from whatever. And we had a company here called DFP, and who was the precursors to Purlandine, right? Who opened an office here in Guyana. And Purlandine were all over the Caribbean. They handled all the commercials and stuff like that, and slides and all this kind of stuff for the cinemas, because that's where all these things are shown. There's no TV, so all we had was radio, which was to me, up to this day, is still a fantastic medium.
Radio has evolved. It went, and I think it's back in a bang, because all the minibuses are listening to it now. And I remain quite, when it comes to radio. But the advertising forms, have you had a look recently and seen the kind of work what advertising forms are doing? What are your thoughts on that?
I follow it a lot. I mean, the thing is, I don't want to be critical of other people's work, but you did say something that would make me want to respond to, which is there's so many apps around, there's so many things to aid you to produce.
That it stifles your creativity.
Well, I don't even think it stifles it. If you got the creativity, you don't stifle it, it enhances it. But because a lot of the people who are using these apps are not creatively minded, at least not in the initial stages of their work. A lot of them use these apps because they're there and they're very proficient with them, and they do good work out of it. But at the end of the day, advertising is about creativity. right? It's about creative. It's about getting attention, using the right, even using the right fonts, using the right mixes, the amount of time you spend on a take, a scene, whatever. You know, all these things come together to produce, you know, a compelling ad that would want you to, you know, think about. And the thing is, in advertising, I've always learned that from the beginning, and it holds to this day because I see it on the foreign television programs. Simplicity. Simplicity is something a lot of Guyanese are afraid of. They're afraid to be simple. They want to be, you know, flamboyant and use all the fancy things, a piece of this and a piece of that. You know, all those things have a purpose. All those aids and apps, they have a purpose.
No, but you've raised a very, and Freddie, I remember driving along these banks, I think about a few months back, and we just put up the screens on the overpass, and I was looking at this ad, and I couldn't make, it has a little piece, and what Bernard is saying this, it has a little piece with a supermarket there, and a whole bunch of words. I think they were doing a promotion, and they wanted to put in the dates and all kind of thing, and I called them and said, please take it off. The client is not to get in the money's worth. The screen is looking stupid, and this thing does not make sense. I look at Nike and Pepsi and what they have done. Nike is a simple thing, just do it. And just say that, the branding. Pepsi, and then you see the soda coming out of it, and just keep it right there. Very, very simple. And I agree with you. But again, I think when we look at Guyana and our creativity here, we do happen to have some very good talent. Imagine you see some young guys are in the field, and you see the magic that they'll be able to do using drones, using some of the latest camera equipment and what they bring out. They built Freddie Kissoon using some of the apps and the programs like CorelDRAW and so on. You got to see how they build these things layers by layers, and what you they build in 3Ds and 2Ds and all kind of things. And we do happen to have it here. I think back in those days, if you were thinking 60s or 70s, you could not imagine that you actually have a computer that could probably take away those works. At Starbuck News, just before I hand over back to Freddie, joining Starbuck News, I think, was 1999, where the newsroom was. Right behind that was what they call a dark room. And I went in a couple of times to see how they were doing it until the technology happened that you could send from the page where you lay the paper out straight to the plates. But what you had to do in the interim there was you cut out, you paste, you call it cut and paste. I think that's what you were talking about, and you put it on that, and that's what you burn onto the plate.
Special paste to artists, yeah.
Right. And that jumped the whole thing and took away, and probably somebody lost a job. But it became, technology would have allowed you to reduce the processing time, and your paper goes to bed very, very early. But things have changed dramatically from when those days, again, to the little bit that announcement and the radio to television, and now you have internet and cable television all comes into play. Yeah, dramatically so.
Right, let's talk about the other Bernard Ramsay. I think the other Bernard Ramsay is what our viewers want to hear about and want to see about. Because I think, in all fairness to our history and the Guyanese people, I think you're more known for a certain type, sphere of activity. Rather, I know you're an advertising king and you had your own advertising firm, but 1 year after Gildarie was born, you were thrusted into a sphere of activity, which I think is what most people know you, but rather than the advertising. Now, this Portuguese guy working in advertising belonged to a certain type of society. How is it that you made that leap from that type to being a designer in one of the earliest Mashramani float? How did that metamorphosis came about?
Well, okay. Let me first say I'm not Portuguese, but
I know.
No, I'm just kidding.
But are you English or Portuguese?
No, I'm mixed. English and Portuguese. On my mother's side, strong Portuguese. On my father's side, Scottish.
Oh, because a lawyer died the other day, Joey King.
Yes.
And Joey King would tell you, I'm not Portuguese. Father Morrison, one of my heroes, was not Portuguese.
Yes, I'm not Portuguese. Actually, before I answer your question, I went to report a matter at the police station once, and she asked me, what should I put for you, Portuguese? I says, but how could you say that? I'm a Guyanese, how could you call me a Portuguese? A Brazilian would be annoyed if you call him a Portuguese. And he speaks Portuguese. I says, no, sweetheart, I'm a Guyanese, put Guyanese. No, but I got to mix this. I says, listen, I'm telling you what I am. You put what you want. And I finished with that. Mashramani, okay.
Your first float,
okay.
1974.
Now, right, when I came back to Ghana, I met this gentleman who I had done some work for prior to leaving Ghana. Which was the Ghana Development Corporation, which is run by a gentleman called Garvin Kennard.
The rice man.
The rice man, okay. And Garvin Kennard, they had a display upstairs of Ghana Development Corporation on the fourth floor of the Bank of Ghana building, of which we were on too, our agency were on. And they had commissioned my friend, that I worked with at the graphic, Mikey Meal, to do this job. And Mikey Meal drew me in. He says, Bernard, because we used to work as a team. So we did this display, and we worked nights. From work, we would go down there, we'd work till maybe 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, working on this display. So when I got back to Ghana, and I was doing a lecture at the Carnegie School of Home Economics. At the end of the lecture, Reggie came up, he says, oh my God, Bernard, you remember me? You're back. I said, of course, Reggie, I remember you. He says, man, I got to speak with you. I said, well, what? He says, man, you've heard of our Mashramani? I said, yeah, I heard of it. As a matter of fact, I've seen a bit of it, and I was very impressed. And there's this guy called David Lanny, and he was doing some fantastic work in costume building and making and stuff like that. And I'd seen a piece of it on the road. He says, man, I'd like to get you involved. You got a talent. You're a good artist, blah, 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 blah. And there was a program called the Feed, Clothe, and House program at the time, the FCH program. So he said, we want to do some floats for this thing. And I says, well, I can do what I could. Now, I used to be very fascinated with the floats way back in the day when people like Godfrey Chin were designing floats. And I just used to Helen of Troy and these things, man. I used to be blown away. I would go to my way because I was always very artistically minded. And so I paid keen attention of how these guys produced these things back then. You know, you couldn't see the vehicle that was moving the display. It was all covered. But in Guyana, the little that I'd seen, they had these tractors pulling stuff and a low bed and stuff like that, and it was all naked and things displayed. Badly done, but to me it was unfinished. So I designed these 3 floats: Feed, Clothe, and House, and made sure that the trucks that they were going to be, mobilizing them were all concealed. You couldn't see this thing. You drive out, peep through a little window. Had to climb through to get in the truck. You couldn't even open the door to get in the cabin. Everything was concealed. And when Reddy saw it, he said, "Man, beautiful." He says, "Man, this is exactly what we want." He says, "Give me an estimate for it." And I can't believe up to this day that estimate, when I worked it out for that thing, came up to something like about $18,000. $15,000 to $18,000.
This is a lot of money back in
back. And Reddy said to me, "Bernard, are you sure you're not undervaluing your work?" Man, He says, "Look, you put a better markup on that thing. He says, because I'm looking to make an impression, because he was the public relations officer for Guystack.
What was his name, Reggie? What?
Reggie Moore.
Reggie
Moore, yeah. They lived in Alberton. The family lived in Alberton. Very nice family. And it was when I went to make the presentation to him, actually, at the public buildings, where he had his office, that I first met in person Lance Gibbs. Because Lance Gibbs was the for Guystack, he was the sports organizer at the time, right? So I got to meet our famous Lance Gibbs, and I did the floats, and lo and behold, it got the first prize for the large commercial floats.
In 1974.
In 1974, for the first prize. So, I mean, I was gung-ho about that, and I didn't expect that. I said, well, I entered the thing. But it
beginning of a new career.
Yeah. The next year, of course, they want me to do the same thing. I did another presentation for them. All this time, I don't even know anything about costumes and stuff, and I know about floats. I can give you a beautiful float, right?
But the two overlap somehow.
Well, they overlap, but the way they were described as it was as the costume, band and float parade, right?
Yeah,
costume,
and you got prizes for each one of them. Categories.
Right, and you had kings, queens, individuals, band of the year, large band, medium band, small band, this band.
How many years consecutively did you win it?
Almost a decade.
More, about 20 years.
20 years you were winning prizes every single year? First prize all the time?
Not first prize all the time. I mean, but many of my presentations were first prize winners and band of the year winners. But because, one year I may win in the large bands, and next year I may win in the medium bands.
I remember one of
always win something.
I remember one that was number one, and I'd like you to talk about it. Mm-hmm. No blade of grass.
Not a blade of grass.
Not a blade of grass.
Okay, not
Tell
a blade
us about that.
Yeah. I was working at the time. By that time,
Dave Martin didn't sue you for copyright.
He couldn't. He was glad. He was happy. I became a very good friend of Dave Martin's through another friend. Not because of that. In Toronto, he had a club called Replace.
Yeah.
And his friend, who was a friend of ours before I met Dave, introduced me to Dave, and man, we became buddy friends up to this day. Very close friends. So while I was working for Demerara Distillers Limited, who's been a client of mine throughout my career, from Booker's days right through, I came up with this. But what I would do, I would conceptualize, because by the time I came out with Not a Blade of Grass, I was seasoned into this thing. So I used to go to Trinidad and watch how the guys work and listen to their experiences. Yeah, for the carnival. So I would know that you had to plan ahead. These guys, as soon as the carnival done, they plan for the next. So they know. Some of them know what they're doing for the next two carnivals, right? We had to wait. Silly enough, we had to wait for a theme. And I fought that thing down to the end until they did away with it. You can't give 20 designers a theme to work with for Carnival. I mean, you're going to end up with variations of the same thing. You know, right. I was saying, look, let the designers do what they want to do. Their own imagination. It ain't got to be anything to do with Guyana and feed.
So they did do away with it?
They did it, actually. Right. People start coming over with
how did Dave Martin feel about?
Well, what happened was after I designed
that was his song.
After I designed it, I designed a band called Not a Blade of Grass based on his song. So and it had a lot of potential for a band, because he talked about not one blue sake, not one rice grain. I mean, we put all of that into the thing. And I called Dave. I said, Dave, I am speaking with Mr. Superstar and Mr. Kamal Samaru, and we want to we can do this band for DDL, Not a Blade of Grass, but we want you to be in this band, right? He said, wow. He says, man, I've always wanted to play on the road. Never played on the road yet in Guyana. I played at stages. So, but they always came from Mashramani. So I knew you would be in Guyana. And the night before he played, well, we'd all tied it up and everything. He didn't have his percussion section wasn't too wide at the time, and we had he wanted what do you call an Iron Man. Iron Man is a man who take the hub of the motor car wheel and knock it in the sun, and he played it to rhythm, and that gets people moving. So he wanted the Iron Man on the band. So we got a guy, he came on and everything, and they played at Pegasus tonight. And the next morning they played up to about 1 o'clock or something, and by 6 o'clock we were on the road to get the band going. And we got all the costumes out there, everything. Dave got on to and this guy's song test and everything, got the band going. And I'll tell you, because people knew that they were going to be on the road, man, the crowds that was outside there.
That was one of the biggest.
What the bigger people were, because it's Dave Martin.
Yeah.
And that man played not a blade of grass the whole day. He had to play the whole day. And I never seen, in all my experience in Mashramani, I've never seen a band played non-stop. Non-stop. When he is singing, the band going, and the Iron Man going, and they're going, and they're going. Isa Prasad was a very conservative man, God rest his dead. He came on the band, came on the truck, right? Came on the truck. My wife had cut her bottom of her foot very badly this same morning with a blade that was sticking up in the ground. The guys were working in the mash camp, and she stepped in it. Oh. Yeah, I had to take her to the Davis Memorial, and she had to have stitches, and she lost a lot of blood, and so she was in the truck too, with bands and her crutches and everything. Yeah.
But let me ask Bernard. Back in those days, there wasn't a lot of materials coming into the country. Was that a major challenge? I'll tell you why I'm interested. I saw the folks who were watching us talking with Solo, because Solo was on thing on Duncan Street. I'm not sure what role they played. I can't remember. But we used to live in the Silver Street in Newtown.
Right.
So it was just the first corner, and so you used to come out there. And that was in the days that everybody didn't have a car.
Right.
So when you see people join in from afar, you know that they had to make a sacrifice. But match was a big thing. And very early morning, the pitch of tents, and back in the simple life back then. But I think you would not believe all the kids and the drumming and the pulsating music that was there. I thought those were the best match that I've ever seen. The 80s were the best.
For me, I think they were, because you had to be more creative. Right now, what passes for creativity is a half-naked woman. And that is what people want to see now.
But you have to make those materials. Because what I'm trying to think, let people understand, back in those days, in the 80s and maybe even up to the early 90s, you didn't get in a lot of materials coming into the country. So when you had to make do with what you had, local materials and other stuff, to make it happen.
What we did back then was fantastic, because we had to buy all our stuff mainly out of Trinidad, right? Like a place called Samaroos. They brought in all year round. They brought stuff for Carnival, and all the major designers would go to Trinidad. Hard currency was difficult to get, but
who was that?
Hard currency.
But
because this thing was a national event, doors were open for us. Doors open for us. I mean, when you got to get $15 to go to travel to wherever you're going, you allow $15 Guyana, right, to go wherever you're going.
Yeah.
And we were able to buy currency. You were able to get currency from the bank.
A lot of hustling going on.
Yeah. I mean, but we weren't given unlimited currency, but we were given sufficient currency we were putting our needs, right? And obviously we were inflated because we want to get enough money to buy what we want. But there was also an emphasis being placed at the time on local materials, right? And I used to make as much use of local materials and enhance them with
like what kind of thing? Tell the people out there.
Okay, we would use things like bamboo. We would use cane. The cane flower, the nice flower that comes up at the top of the cane plant, and plants, dried stuff, dried plants, dried leaves, spray them with some paint and decorate them and that kind of thing. That was what we would do. right? All the fabrics and things, we would mainly buy them locally. Of course, they were imported, but we buy them from local shops here. The satins and stuff, we look for the shiny materials. If you want the lames, which came in from Trinidad, the real glittery stuff, that costs a little bit more. But for your kings and your queens and then you had to get that.
So it was a challenge back in those days.
It was a challenge.
Just relax. I'm going into an area and I don't want to make you uncomfortable.
Make him uncomfortable. What's wrong
I don't
with
want to
you?
make you uncomfortable. When these programs are on the air, they advertise in the mornings, right, with your photograph.
Right.
And I got a call. You have to research a guest, of course, so I research you. And when I got a call and somebody tell me something about another aspect of your life that I didn't know about, so they say, ask him. So I'm asking you now, is it true you used to design furniture surplus in Burnham?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Ask him. But how that came about?
By natural talent.
You were interior decorator.
I designed for Pegasus. I did interiors for Pegasus for Demico House when they had
This man is one of Ghana's unsung heroes.
No, I did a lot of stuff. So for me, art has no limitation.
Right. No, that's what I like about it.
Yeah. Let's talk about Burnham.
Kites.
How many years you designed this furniture and those things?
No, actually the furniture is not furniture, it's Burbage chairs. Right? Burbage chairs. I did barrel furniture. I did barrel furniture using DDL barrels and stuff for the Pegasus and all that. I made long couches with them, I made bars with them, I made tables.
Oh yeah, those make lovely stuff. Those were on barrels.
Yeah. Oh, so you designed those things? Those were barrels?
Yeah. I bought the barrels for them.
They actually make nice bars.
So how many years you did this for Burnham?
Did what?
How many years you did work for Burnham? No, Mashramani. His interior, his design.
I never worked for Burnham. I worked for the country, for Mashramani. I never did specific notes. The closest I came probably for working for Burnham, if you like, is through my agency.
But the question I got was, he designed furniture for Burnham.
No, I never designed furniture.
I don't know where they got that.
I don't know where they got. No, I don't recall doing anything. Not for Burnham. I mean, I did. When I went to Florida. Okay, I wanted a Burbage chair. I always had a Burbage chair in my home. I guess most of us back in the days had a Burbage chair. It's a fixture in most Guyanese homes. I wanted a Burbage chair. And I said, I had nothing to go by except my memory. So I sat on the computer and I drew the chair out and stuff. And in those days, this is like about 2005, 2006, people weren't readily going to the internet to look for stuff. But then a friend of mine in the States says, man, check the internet, you must find something. And I type in Burbage chairs and one did come up. And I looked at it. I followed the lines of it, and I made it for myself. Beautiful, worked it using pine wood and stuff like that in the States. While I had it in my house there, a Guyanese friend came in and saw it. I said, "Hey man, where you get this from? I would like to get a Burbage chair. Where you get it from?" I said, I made it. I said, you made Burbage. I know you're a furniture maker. I said, no, I'm not a furniture maker. But I went on to make rocking chairs and all kind of stuff, right? In my garage thing. Because, Freddie, if you have the artistic talent, you know to use your hands, right? Things like tools come like second nature to you, and you had the facilities there to do it.
I'm going to put my hand again and say, I don't want to make you uncomfortable. No? I have something here. This seems to be
like a big secret now.
This seems to be another career you're going into. You're a man of many horizons. Within the past 9 days, you have 3 letters in the press.
Yeah.
One in which you don't hold back on your language. We must not be afraid to be thorns in the side, and any government is not providing quality leadership. In 9 days, you have 3 letters in the press. You're complaining about the roads need addressing. Then you're complaining about not complaining. Yeah. One is you complain about the roads. The other you're saying that you're knocking the government, and the other is the diaspora conference. You took a little bit of dig there at the conference. So are we going to see more letters now from Bernard Ramsay?
Freddie, I've been contributing to the media. In fact, you know who the first letter I ever wrote was being conned. Because
being conned?
A con man, right? Tried to con me.
You?
Yeah, and I told David
an experienced man like you?
Yeah. He didn't con me, he attempted to con me.
Out of what?
Yeah. Money? Out of money. In those days that we're talking about, foreign exchange was a big thing, and everybody was trying to buy foreign exchange.
Yeah, right.
And the man tried to sell me. But there's a long story. I didn't even want to go there. But the point is, when I told David Kissoon, he said, when I write a letter about something, the Guyanese people got to know about this person, right? And the person was disguising himself as a doctor, Dr. Singh at the Georgetown Hospital, right? However, that's the first letter I wrote. And then it's the first time I recall, it may have in the old Chronicle and the old Graphic might have had letters people wrote in and one or two. But Starbuck News started a letter column thing and grew it.
But you're a little bit harsh.
To write.
You're a little bit too harsh on the government. There's a part here you say ministers and high officials drive big SUVs and live in fancy communities with fully air-conditioned homes. Not only ministers live like that.
No, but I'm drawing a comparison to the
subject. A lot of rich people live.
No. I'm not very many, actually, not very many. There's I would say a fallacy in this country that people think that there's a lot of rich people. There's not a lot of rich people. There's a few rich people, and there are thousands of poor people, right, who get trodden down, and that is what I'm alluding there to. That, you know, these people, a lot of when I say these people, a lot of people, ministers and otherwise, would have themselves, in these positions and don't even understand what's going on outside there because they don't have to. They have a driver, they have somebody who...
No, man, some of those government ministers and politicians go down to meet the people.
Oh, man. Freddie, you're a journalist, and I'm surprised that you're telling me that. What I'm talking about is not what politicians do. Politicians do that all over the world. They go to meet people. They have to go meet people, right? But I'm saying that day-to-day struggles, they don't even understand it. They hear it. But could they comprehend it? When you're living the life politicians and rich people live, I see it in the United States. They don't understand your predicament, right? They tell you they understand. It's like a man coming to you and saying, "Man, Freddie, I'm sorry to hear that your mom died." He's just telling you something that you think you would like to hear.
You don't painting all politicians too large a brush.
Look, my attitude toward addressing any situation is that people ought to know, and I'm a Guyanese. I belong to no political party, right? I serve no master, and I feel if I see something that is not right, I have a duty as a person, as a Guyanese, to say it.
So you're not anti-government? You're not
No, not at all. Of course not. I am not anti-government at all. I'm not anti-anything. But if I see something wrong, even in a religious situation, I'm gonna talk about it.
Well, you wrote something about the roads in the press. Shortly after it was done.
I know if it was done because of what I wrote. But me and my family coming down from a nice little resort we went to a few weeks ago, coming down at night, and this thing was a nightmare coming down the road. I mean, big trucks at the back of you, trucks coming up on the other side, bad road, holes in the road, you can't see the corner, people partying, carrying on, drinking on the road, East Bank Road. And I like going down this road, and I think to myself, my God, this is we are supposed to be moving this country to a next level, This is the corridor of that people see first when they come into our country. There's a saying, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. That first impression remains with you. And when I saw that, I wrote about it, right? I wrote about it. I saw, we came to a position in the road where you're going to turn off to go to, as Sue's like, we're going to turn off to go to Linden, right? An island in the road that was there for years, right? And the road keep building, so the island is about that much above the road. You can't see it. There's no markings in it, right? Only who knows is there, knows is there. When you see a car mixer, you follow the car. If you don't follow the car, you're going straight into it. Things like that.
Our operators told us we have to go, so we run out of time. So I'll ask Gildarie to give way, and we'll ask you, what are you doing the rest of your life? Famous Johnny Mathis song.
Well, what am I doing with the rest of my life? Just living it. I love life. I believe in life. I believe in now. I'm a man who believes in the moment. As I said before, I don't worry. I don't dwell in the past. I don't believe in the future because it doesn't exist. I believe in now. Right? Whatever you want to do for tomorrow, you got to make plans for today. Right now, you can't make plans when the future comes. It's a new now. So I live my life for now, not for, So I'm enjoying my life as it is right now, and especially when it comes to the thing I love most, which is art. Anybody brings anything to me to do with art, man, sometimes I give my service freely for it because I enjoy it. Bernard, thanks for co-hosting the program with me. Bernard Ramsay, man of many horizons and many spheres of life. It was interesting. I think we didn't get in all of your life, the things the journeys you have made in the UK, your young sweet boy days in Guyana. I didn't want to bring that up, but I heard you were quite a gigolo. I don't know if that's true. Yeah. Huh? I was no different than any one of you.
No.
When we were all younger.
No, not me. Maybe No. Maybe Gildarie.
Paint yourself for that.
You see, he's so Freddie avoiding this thing.
No why throw you back on.
Ramsay, we got to do this again, and
thank
you have to write your autobiography.
Well, thank you very much. I'm very flattered.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a pleasure.
You were watching the Gildarie Freddie Kissoon show. Our guest was famous Mashramani designer, about 20 years, and he has won a number of awards in Guyana and New York for his creative input into Guyanese culture. We'll be back on Wednesday. It was entertaining, interesting, and learning being here an hour with Bernard Ramsay. As I normally say, catch you later.